Think about yourself always, not in a selfish, arrogant, self-centered way, but in a deeply responsible, purposeful, and intentional way. The greatest tragedy in life is not death. It is life without understanding who you are. When you fail to think about yourself, you surrender your purpose to the expectations of others. You become a product of opinions rather than a manifestation of design. You begin to live accidentally instead of intentionally. You must understand that you were not created to be a copy. You were not born to blend into the background of someone else's vision. You are an original idea in the mind of your creator, and every original carries within it a unique assignment. When you ignore yourself, you neglect that assignment. When you ignore yourself, you neglect that assignment. When you silence your inner voice, you drown the instructions meant to guide your life. Thinking about yourself is not optional. It is essential for fulfilling your purpose. Self-awareness is the foundation of purpose and intentional living, because a person cannot effectively direct their life without first understanding who they are at the core of their being. Many individuals move through life reacting to circumstances rather than intentionally shaping them. And this happens because they have never taken the time to truly examine themselves. When you lack self-awareness, you become vulnerable to external influences, allowing society, culture, and the opinions of others to dictate your decisions. This leads to confusion, frustration, and a sense of emptiness because you are living a life that may not align with your true design. However, when you develop self-awareness, you begin to gain clarity about your identity, your strengths, your weaknesses, your desires, and your values. This clarity becomes the compass that guides your actions and decisions, allowing you to live with intention rather than by accident. Understanding yourself requires deliberate effort and consistent reflection. It is not something that happens automatically, but something that must be cultivated through intentional thinking and honest evaluation. You must be willing to ask yourself difficult questions and face uncomfortable truths about your habits, your mindset, and your behavior. This process may not always be easy, but it is necessary for growth. When you become aware of your patterns, you gain the power to change them. When you recognize your strengths, you can develop and maximize them. When you acknowledge your weaknesses, you can work to improve them or manage them effectively. Self-awareness gives you control over your personal development, enabling you to move forward with purpose and confidence. Purpose is directly connected to identity, and identity is discovered through self-awareness. You cannot fulfill a purpose that you do not understand, and you cannot understand your purpose without first understanding yourself. Every individual has been given unique abilities, passions, and perspectives, and these are not random. They are clues that point toward your assignment in life. When you are self-aware, you begin to recognize these clues and align your life accordingly. You stop chasing things that are not meant for you and start focusing on what truly matters. This alignment creates a sense of fulfillment because you are operating within your design rather than against it. Intentional living is the natural result of self-awareness. When you know who you are and what you are meant to do, you begin to make decisions that reflect that understanding. You become more selective with your time, your relationships, and your commitments. You no longer say yes to everything, but instead choose opportunities that align with your purpose. This level of intentionality increases your effectiveness because your actions are focused and meaningful. You are not just busy, but productive. You are not just active, but impactful. Your life gains direction, and your efforts begin to produce results that are consistent with your vision. Without self-awareness, it is easy to fall into the trap of comparison and imitation. You may look at others and try to replicate their paths, believing that their success will guarantee your own. However, this approach often leads to frustration because you are trying to live a life that was not designed for you. Self-awareness frees you from this cycle by helping you understand that your journey is unique. It allows you to appreciate your individuality and embrace your differences. Instead of comparing yourself to others, you focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Self-awareness also enhances your emotional intelligence, enabling you to understand and manage your emotions more effectively. When you are aware of how you feel and why you feel that way, you are less likely to react impulsively. You become more thoughtful in your responses, which improves your relationships and decision-making. You are able to communicate more clearly, resolve conflicts more effectively, and maintain a sense of inner stability even in challenging situations. This emotional balance is essential for intentional living because it allows you to remain focused on your purpose without being easily distracted by external pressures. Growth is impossible without self-awareness because you cannot improve what you do not recognize. When you are unaware of your limitations, you are likely to repeat the same mistakes. But when you are self-aware, you identify areas that need development and take steps to improve them. This continuous process of evaluation and adjustment leads to progress. You become more refined, more capable, and more aligned with your purpose over time. Self-awareness keeps you accountable, ensuring that you do not become complacent or stagnant. Ultimately, self-awareness is not just about knowing yourself, but about using that knowledge to live intentionally. It is about making conscious choices that reflect your identity and your purpose. It is about taking responsibility for your life and directing it with clarity and confidence. When self-awareness becomes a priority, your life becomes more focused, more meaningful, and more impactful. You stop drifting and start leading your life with intention, ensuring that every step you take moves you closer to the fulfillment of your purpose. Stop living for others' opinions and start aligning with your unique assignment, because the moment you allow the voices of others to control your decisions, you surrender the authority you were given over your own life. Many people never become who they were created to be because they are too busy trying to become who others expect them to be. They measure their worth based on approval, applause, and acceptance, not realizing that these things are temporary and often misleading. When you live for opinions, you become a reflection of shifting perspectives rather than a manifestation of a fixed purpose. Opinions change, people change, trends change, but purpose remains constant. If you build your life on something as unstable as human opinion, you will constantly find yourself adjusting, compromising, and losing direction. From a young age, many individuals are conditioned to seek validation. They are taught to behave in ways that gain approval from parents, teachers, friends, and society. While guidance is important, there comes a point where you must transition from being directed by others to being guided by purpose. If that transition never happens, you remain dependent on external voices for internal decisions. This dependency weakens your confidence and clouds your judgment because you begin to doubt your own instincts. You start asking others what you should do instead of trusting the ability within you to decide. Over time, this creates a life that looks acceptable on the outside, but feels unfulfilling on the inside. Your unique assignment is not something that can be defined by the expectations of others because it was not given to them, it was given to you. This means that no one else can fully understand it, interpret it, or execute it the way you are meant to. When you try to fit your life into someone else's vision, you distort your design. You may achieve certain forms of success, but they will not bring satisfaction because they are not connected to your true purpose. Alignment with your assignment requires courage because it often means going against the crowd, disappointing people, and making choices that others may not understand. Living for opinions creates fear, and fear is one of the greatest obstacles to purpose. You become afraid of being judged, criticized, or rejected, and this fear limits your actions. It keeps you from taking risks, expressing yourself authentically, and pursuing opportunities that align with your purpose. Instead of asking, what is right for your life, you begin to ask, what will be accepted by others? This shift in focus leads to hesitation and missed opportunities. You end up living a smaller life than you were designed for because you are trying to fit within the boundaries of other people's comfort zones. When you stop living for opinions, you reclaim your freedom. You begin to make decisions based on conviction rather than consensus. This does not mean that you ignore wise counsel or refuse to listen to others, but it means that their input does not override your purpose. You learn to filter advice, taking what aligns with your assignment and leaving what does not. This level of discernment is essential because not every voice deserves influence over your life. Some people speak from their fears, their limitations, or their own unfulfilled desires, and if you are not careful, you can adopt those perspectives as your own. Aligning with your unique assignment requires clarity, and clarity comes from self-reflection and intentional thinking. You must take time to understand what you are called to do and why it matters. This understanding strengthens your resolve because it gives you a reason to stay committed even when others disagree. When you are clear about your purpose, you are less likely to be swayed by criticism or distracted by comparison. You become focused, and that focus increases your effectiveness. Comparison often goes hand in hand with living for opinions. You look at others and measure your progress against theirs, forgetting that their journey is different from yours. This creates unnecessary pressure and can lead to feelings of inadequacy or pride, depending on how you perceive yourself in relation to others. Alignment with your assignment removes the need for comparison because you are no longer trying to compete with anyone. You are simply fulfilling your role. This brings a sense of peace and confidence because you understand that your value is not determined by how you measure up to others, but by how faithfully you execute your purpose. There will be times when aligning with your assignment feels lonely. Not everyone will understand your decisions, and some may even oppose them. This is where strength and conviction are required. You must be willing to stand alone if necessary, trusting that your commitment to purpose will ultimately produce results. Greatness often requires separation from the crowd because the crow, D, is usually moving in the direction of comfort, not purpose. Your life is too significant to be lived based on opinions that change with time and circumstance. You were created with intention, and that intention carries an assignment that only you can fulfill. When you stop living for others' opinions and start aligning with your unique assignment, you step into a life of authenticity, clarity, and impact. You become focused on what truly matters, and your actions begin to reflect your purpose. This alignment not only brings personal fulfillment, but also allows you to contribute meaningfully to the world around you, leaving a legacy that is rooted in purpose rather than perception. Discipline, growth, and responsibility come from understanding your true value, because the way you see yourself determines the way you live your life. If you do not recognize your worth, you will struggle to commit to the habits, decisions, and standards that are necessary for success. Many people lack discipline not because they are incapable, but because they do not see themselves as valuable enough to deserve better outcomes. When you undervalue yourself, you tolerate mediocrity, you accept distractions, and you settle for less than what you are capable of becoming. However, when you truly understand your value, your mindset begins to shift, and that shift influences every area of your life. Discipline is not just about forcing yourself to do things you do not feel like doing. It is about aligning your actions with a higher understanding of who you are. When you know your worth, you begin to act in ways that reflect that knowledge. You no longer engage in behaviors that diminish you because you recognize that your life carries importance. This awareness creates internal motivation, which is far more powerful than external pressure. Instead of needing someone to push you, you begin to push yourself because you understand what is at stake. You realize that every decision you make either adds value to your life or takes away from it. Growth is a natural outcome of valuing yourself because when you see your potential, you feel a responsibility to develop it. You no longer remain comfortable with stagnation because you understand that staying the same is a form of neglect. Personal development becomes a priority rather than an option. You invest in learning, improving your skills, and expanding your mindset because you believe that you are worth the effort. This belief fuels consistency, and consistency is what produces results over time. Growth does not happen overnight, but when it is driven by a deep sense of value, it becomes a continuous process rather than a temporary phase. Responsibility is closely connected to value because when you understand your worth, you stop blaming external factors for your circumstances. You begin to take ownership of your life. You recognize that you have been given the ability to make choices, and those choices shape your future. Instead of making excuses, you start making adjustments. You evaluate your actions, your habits, and your environment, and you take steps to improve them. This level of responsibility empowers you because it shifts your focus from what you cannot control to what you can. You become proactive rather than reactive, and this mindset is essential for long-term success. Many people struggle with discipline because they are trying to build it without first addressing their self-perception. If you believe that you are not capable, not deserving, or not important, it will be difficult to maintain the level of commitment required for discipline. Your actions will always align with your beliefs. This is why understanding your true value is the foundation. Once your belief system is strengthened, Zipline becomes a natural extension of that belief. You begin to make choices that support your growth because you see yourself as someone worth investing in. Understanding your value also influences the standards you set for your life. If your standards are low, your results will reflect that. You will accept less effort, less focus, and less commitment from yourself. But when you recognize your worth, you raise your standards. You expect more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of respect for your potential. These higher standards lead to better habits, and better habits lead to better outcomes. Discipline is sustained by standards, and standards are established through value. Growth requires discomfort, and without a strong sense of value, it is easy to avoid the challenges that come with it. You may choose comfort over progress because you do not see the benefit of pushing yourself. However, when you understand your worth, you are more willing to endure temporary discomfort for long-term gain. You see challenges as opportunities to improve rather than obstacles to avoid. This perspective transforms the way you approach difficulties, allowing you to grow through them instead of being stopped by them. Responsibility also means being accountable for how you use your time, energy, and resources. When you value yourself, you become more intentional with these things. You stop wasting time on activities that do not contribute to your growth. You manage your energy by focusing on what matters most. You use your resources wisely because you understand that they are tools to help you fulfill your purpose. This level of intentionality increases your effectiveness and moves you closer to your goals. Your environment and relationships are also influenced by how you value yourself. When you understand your worth, you become more selective about who and what you allow. Low into your life, you distance yourself from negativity and surround yourself with people who encourage growth and accountability. This creates an environment that supports your discipline and reinforces your commitment to improvement. Ultimately, discipline, growth, and responsibility are not isolated traits. They are interconnected outcomes of a deeper understanding of your value. When you truly know your worth, you begin to live differently. You think differently, you act differently, and you make decisions that align with the highest standard. This alignment leads to progress, fulfillment, and a life that reflects your true potential. Protect your time, mind, and energy to fulfill your life's purpose, because these are the most valuable resources you have. And once they are misused or wasted, the impact on your life can be difficult to recover from. Many people treat these resources casually, giving their time to anything, allowing their minds to absorb everything.